after inspection part, and the palpation, the first sentence should be, my inspected findings are confirmed on palpation. Now, whatever you have mentioned in your inspection, you have to confirm. Okay. Of course, you start from proximal to distal, and the foremost is the temperature. You compare the temperature, local temperature. I mean local temperature around the hip joint. Let's say the pathological side or abnormal side is right side. You compare the back with the back of your hand, palm, back of the hand. First abnormal side, then normal side, then again abnormal side. Whether it is raised or not, especially in infectious or septic cases, it may be raised. Next is tenderness. Tenderness basically you see on from the anterior aspect of hip and lateral side. In the anterior aspect of hip, here we have the ASIS and its tubercle and the inguinal ligament. You just mark a point which is about 2 cm below to the mid inguinal point. This is the inguinal ligament. This is the tubercle, ASIS. Draw this line, take a midpoint, and 2 cm below here, somewhere here around, somewhere here. You palpate for tenderness. Okay, for tenderness. This point corresponding to the anterior joint line. Anterior joint line. Okay. So do you palpate here for tenderness? Lateral side around at the trochanteric area. You also see for tenderness. One of the other way of reducing tenderness is you palpate superficially. Sometimes it is tender on for the trochanteric bursitis. You may have tender areas. Other is you just give thrust, deep tenderness, sometimes indirect tenderness like that. These are 3 ways: the superficial way, the deep tenderness, and thrust from the heel. There is 3 ways to elicit tenderness. Once you are over with temperature and the tenderness, you palpate the iliac crest. Iliac crest is an area. This iliac crest. Once you go proximal and lateral from the anterior superior iliac spine, you can palpate the iliac crest. You palpate the iliac crest for tenderness, whether it is smooth or irregular, and whether it is thickened or not. Especially in case of osteomyelitis of this iliac bone, you may have an irregular or thickened iliac crest. Next is the anterior superior iliac spine. Now, anterior superior iliac spine, it is important. You must see whether one of them is either higher level or lower level. The level is very much important. Now, if one of them is a higher level, you said right-sided ASIS is at higher level. Is at, now no more appears to be. If lower, you said right-sided ASIS is at lower level. ASIS. Then palpate the base of the scapula triangle or the femoral triangle. It's a triangle with a base upward formed by the inguinal ligament. You palpate the midpoint. As I said, it is for joint line, anterior joint line, where you can palpate. This is not the joint, but it is a representation of the anterior joint line, because the hip is surrounded by a big bulky muscles. If your tenderness is there may be some joint parallel. Next is 2 cm below and just lateral to that mid inguinal point, you can palpate the pulsation of femoral artery, right side. Similarly, on the left side, you palpate and compare the volume, whether it is regular or not, and how is the volume is comparable or not. Just beneath the femoral artery, we have a femoral knob. Femoral neck. Just before the femoral artery, just beneath, you have a femoral neck, against background which you are going to palpate the femoral artery pulsation. If it is both the femoral artery pulsation are comparable and equal, this is called also known as vascular sign of Narat, negative. Remember, the negative means normal, where you have the pulsation of the femoral artery compared on both the sides. Sometimes, let's say there is a posterior dislocation of hip, and the head and neck, in that case, head and neck is not in their original position. So you don't have a firm background to palpate the femoral artery pulsation, and it appears to your hand that the pulsation is diminished. So this is the diminished volume of pulsation, diminished strength of volume of pulsation is vascular sign of Narat positive, which is not normal. In a posterior dislocation of hip, you have vascular sign of Narat positive, where the femoral artery position is diminished. But sometimes in anterior dislocation of hip, where the femur is lying more anterior than the opposite side, the pulsation, the volume of pulsation on the ipsilateral side or right side, let's say for example, may be increased or more prominent than that on the left side. That is also abnormal. Okay. So once you are over with the vascular nerve narat and the palpation of the anterior joint line, you come to the lateral side. You palpate the trochanter, tip of the trochanter on either side. And on a trochanter, you comment the first is the level of trochanter, whether one of them is a higher or lower level of trochanter. Next is the tenderness, whether the trochanter tips are tender or not, especially you will have in intertrochanter fracture. And next is it is smooth or irregular. In a healed intertrochanter fracture or sometimes in a fresh fracture, these are irregular. In an intertrochanter fracture, they are tender and they are irregular. So trochanter, you see for level, smooth or not, and tender or not. These three. Right. Now again, in the palpation from posterior, I have told you that you must specifically mention about the bony globular hard mass on the glute area. Sometimes in a posterior dislocation of hip, you have a bony globular hard mass on the gluteal region, which moves with the movement of the lower limb. So that suggests that that is a femoral head, which you will get in a posterior dislocation of hip. Okay. Of course, you can palpate for the posterior superior iliac spines whether they are tender or not. See that? Okay. Now, once we are over with the inspection and palpation, we go with the movement. As you know that hip joint is a ball and socket joint. It has movement in all three planes. For example, in a sagittal plane, the movement is the flexion and extension. The axis is from medial lateral axis. In a coronal plane, we have the varus and the valgus. And the axis is anterior posterior. In a transverse plane, the movement is interrotation and external rotation, and the axis is superior inferior axis. So we are going to assess movement in all these three planes. In a movement, conventionally classical movement, when you say movement in lower limb, it is a passive movement. Basically, passive movement only we assess. Okay. So regarding the spectrum of deformity, spectrum of the pathology, let's say the flexion and the extension of the hip is a movement in the sagittal plane with the axis from medial lateral axis. Okay, these have some degree of extension and some degree of some flexion also. As the disease progresses, initially there will be loss of terminal extension. The extension will be lost, or range of extension will be diminished. If the disease progresses further, there may be no extension. However, some flexion may be there. It is come to back to not neutral, but beyond this you cannot extend. Flexion will be there. Even disease becomes, when the disease even becomes severe, the flexion will be incomplete. It cannot go back to zero. However, it will be lying on some certain degree, like 10 degree or 20 degree of flexion. The extension is not possible beyond this. However, some further flexion may be possible or may not be possible. Now, this condition where the hip is lying in certain position within the flexion range, and the opposite movement or the extension is not possible without moving the pelvis. Suppose it's lying in this position, and if you try to extend the hip, the pelvis moves. However, the further flexion on that towards the same direction, maybe flexion may be possible or may not be possible. This condition where the hip is lying in a certain position of flexion and the opposite movement, that is extension, is not possible. That is a fixed flexion deformity. So I mean, fixed deformity is the deformity in a range of motion where the opposite movement is not possible without moving the pelvis. Okay. So in all the three axes, we see for the movement, and if there is any fixed deformity along any of the axes, classically that is to be described first. If not, you go with the flexion and extension. While assessing the flexion deformity of hip, Thomas test is to be used. Let's say for example, there is exaggerated lumbar lordosis. You can insert your hand between this back and the examination couch, and you can see through and through. Okay, through and through. This is because there is some degree of fixed flexion deformity in the hip that is compensated by lifting of the pelvis. Lifting or wrong with the lumbar lordosis exaggeration, because the patient has to keep the limb to level to the examination couch. Now to demonstrate that amount of deformity, what we do is this Thomas test. You first try to see that it is through and through. You can see. You can insert your hand, okay, and gradually, you are supposed to move the normal hip, opposite hip. You flex hip and knee. Don't remove your hand here from here, hip and knee, till the lumbar lordosis obliterated. And ask the patient. Okay. Okay, I can actually ask the patient to hold the limb in that position, hip in that position. In this case, whenever you obliterate lumbar lordosis, there is certain degree of flexion will be there in the hip, like this. You press for some while, and to just see that it is the deformity, and there is extension is not possible. Just to demonstrate that extension is not possible, then you see that you make an angle. You see measure the angle between the long extended thigh and the examination couch. This angle is the angle of this angle. Okay, this angle is, suppose this angle is there. This angle is the angle of fixed flexion deformity, maybe 10 degree, let's say. Because why it is a fixed flexion deformity? This is in flexed position, and why it is flexed? Because if I try to flex this or extend this, try to do the opposite movement like extend, the pelvis starts moving, and again the lumbar lordosis reappears. So this lumbar lordosis is obliterated here. If I try to extend beyond this position, the lumbar lordosis is again reappear. Exaggerated will be again exaggerated. Okay, so that's why this is known as fixed flexion deformity. But remember, if you try to do too much of flexion here beyond the ischial tuberosity starts rising. That is wrong. You just flex till the lumbar lordosis is obliterated. Okay, like this. So now we have your test is not complete still. This is a fixed flexion deformity. Okay. Now after that, you try to see whether if there are any further range of motion in the range of flexion is possible or not. You try to do like that. This is going. It may go up to full. Let's say 140, and it's coming up to here only. Let's say 10 degrees, beyond which pelvis is moving. So this is 10 degree of fixed flexion deformity. So you express like that. There is fixed flexion deformity of 10 degree in the right hip with further range of motion from 10 to 140 degree. Sometimes the condition may be that 10 degree fixed flexion, and it may go up to 90 degree, and beyond which the pelvis starts moving. So in that condition, there is a fixed flexion deformity of 10 degree with there is fixed flexion 10 degree with further range of motion from 10 to 90 degree. In even severe cases like it is 10 degree, if you try to move the pelvis little bit, try to extend, try to flex, there is movement of pelvis. Even if a certain degree of flexion, the pelvis moves. There is no free movement. That is called jog, J-O-G, jog. So that is, there is 10 degree of fixed flexion deformity with further jog of motion, what you say. So there are three different conditions. Okay. So this is how to demonstrate the fixed flexion deformity of the hip joint with Thomas test. Before doing this Thomas test, you should demonstrate the flexion on the normal hip. Remember, you should demonstrate the flexion on the normal hip, flexion and extension on the normal hip. Okay. Extension has to be demonstrated by keeping the patient prone. I will be demonstrating on at the last. There are some fallacies of the Thomas test. Like when both the hips are involved, the Thomas test cannot determine the fixed flexion deformity. Other is, to demonstrate the fixed flexion deformity on the right side, the left hip and knee should have almost near normal flexion. When there is flexion deformity of the hip and or knee, when they cannot be flexed complete like that, you cannot demonstrate the Thomas test. You cannot do the Thomas test. So when the hip and knee cannot be flexed, if there is a flexion deformity of the knee, or second condition, when both the hips are involved, it is difficult to demonstrate the Thomas test for fixed flexion deformity. Or sometimes in a very obese patient, when in an obese patient, it is difficult to assess the exaggerated lumbar lordosis. That's also one of the fallacy. Okay. Now after flexion and extension I will be demonstrating at the last. Next is adduction and abduction. You see this, these are ASIs are there. There are 2 marks for AS anterior superior iliac spine. Okay. Before that, you have to bring the ASIs at same level. Make the pelvis square. Sometimes if this ASI is at a higher level than this other side, you do the adduction. If at lower level, you do abduction. Okay? You do abduction like this. You keep the thumb over here, and accordingly, depending upon level of the ASI, you either adduct or abduct, just to make a pelvis square. That is, both the ASIs are at the same level. Let's say the ASI is at the higher level. You do adduction of some degree. Now the ASI are at the same level. Okay. So this is pelvis has been squared. Now from this, you try to do adduction, for adduction and abduction. Let's say on making squaring the pelvis, and if you are doing the abduction here, the pelvis is moving. The ASI is moving. You have keep your eye here. It is moving. That means from this position, you cannot do the abduction. However, you can do further abduction from this side. Let's say up to 40 degree here, and this is almost, let's say 10 degree. So long axis of the thigh and the midline plane, the angle between these 2 axes, this is almost 10 degree. Let's say it is if you keep this in 10 degree, this position, the ASI is at square. The ASI at the same level, pelvis is square. But if you try to do abduction, the pelvis is moving. But you can do adduction from up to 40 degree. So what is this? This is 10 degree of fixed adduction deformity, because beyond this you cannot bring to normal. If you bring to normal, then again the pelvis becomes tilting. There is tilting. So there is fixed adduction deformity of 10 degree with further range of motion from 10 to 40 degree. That's how we see. Okay. Let's say the right side ASI is at lower level. So you have to do the abduction, and ASI moves up, and you have the squaring of the pelvis. Now you in the same way, you do some certain degree abduction here. Now the ASI is at the same level. But if you try to do adduction here, again the pelvis is coming down, ASI is coming down. These are not at the same level. It is not square no more. So this position, the ASI is at the same level. And you can do further abduction here, let's say up to this 50 degrees. But from this point, if you try to adduct further, the pelvis or ASI start moving. That's why from this point of 20 degree abduction, you cannot adduct or bring to normal or adduct without moving the pelvis. That's why this is, if is the condition, this is the fixed abduction deformity of, let's say 10 degree whatever. Why is it fixed? Because once you try to adduct from this point, the pelvis is moving, but further you can do abduction further. So there is 10 degree, that 10 degree is axis of the lower limb and mid plane. So this 10 degrees of adduction is there, this 10 degree of abduction is there. So there is a fixed abduction deformity of 10 degree with further range of motion from 10 to, let's say, 50 degrees. Sometimes you may have the adduction deformity, you may have abduction deformity, or you may have neither adduction nor abduction, neutral also. This is how you see. You have to square the pelvis and see where the limb lies at that squaring position. Now next is the rotation, external and internal rotation position. Internal rotation position and external rotation position you will see in extended hip and in flexed hip. I have told you that both the limbs are rotating outward, patella facing outward is a natural tendency. Now if you try to do the internal rotation in the extended hip, you can see it's coming to neutral. This is neutral where the patella is facing up. From this I can do the internal rotation with about 40 degrees. From here I can also do the external rotation, almost about 40 degrees. So this is, you can do both the limbs simultaneously, 40 degree internal rotation and 40 degree external rotation, like internal rotation and external rotation. Similarly, you can flex the hip and knee 90 degree and this is the internal rotation in flexed hip, and this is the external rotation of hip in flexed hip. So external rotation and internal rotation. Similarly for the other side, you flex hip and knee 90 degree, internal rotation and external rotation, both. Now for example, let's say this is facing outward, and if I can bring back to neutral, like say this is neutral, neither external rotation nor internal rotation. So this is simply an attitude that lower limb, or this say both the lower limb is in say 10 degree of external rotation. This is attitude. Attitude is only a position attained by the patient. Why it is attitude? Why it is not fixed deformity? Because if it attitude, it can bring to normal. If it is a fixed external rotation deformity, or if there is a, let's say certain 10 degree of fixed external rotation deformity or fixed external deformity, you cannot do the internal rotation beyond this, because opposite movement should not be possible. So here you can do the internal rotation. If it is a fixed external rotation deformity, you cannot do internal rotation from this point, from this position, without moving the pelvis. However, we can do. That's why I said it is an external, it is attitude only. Suppose there is a fixed internal rotation deformity of 10 degree like that, I cannot do the external rotation without moving the pelvis. However, I can do further internal rotation. Whenever the opposite movement is not possible without moving the pelvis, that is a fixed deformity. So this is the external rotation and internal rotation flexion, external rotation and internal rotation extension. Okay, next photo. Now next I will show you the how to assess the extension of the hip. Usually this is the yes. So this is the plane. You flex the hip, flex the knee, and see. This way, this is the extension of hip, and this is the position. Okay, this is the position, and this degree, this plane, and long axis of the thigh, and this examination cause. This angle is the extension. Almost it is usually 20 degree of extension with your normal hip. Similarly for this one also, this is 20 degree of external rotation. Sorry, extension. Okay. Okay. Now after movement, we come for the measurement. Okay, we come for the measurement. Now in measurement, we have a linear measurement and circumferential measurement. In a linear measurement, we have upper length and we have true length. Now first upper length. Upper length, for the upper length, both the limbs should be parallel to each other and parallel trunk like this. These are parallel to each other and they are parallel trunk. You just measure the length of the limb from whatever position the patient has attained. For that, you have taken a bony fixed point proximally. Usually, the G-sternum is taken here. You mark point G-sternum here. Okay. The upper length, while measuring upper length, you have to take a length from the G-sternum. Take point G-sternum here, and up to the most important part of middle malleus, what we have marked here. So this is for right side, and for here, this for the left side. So these are the upper length for right side and left side. Remember, both the limbs are parallel to each other and parallel to trunk. This is the prerequisite for measurement of upper length. Next is true length. In a true length, there are prerequisites. Like the first is the pelvis should be square. I mean, both the ASIs are at the same level. It may be, as I said, it may be at higher or lower. If it is higher, let's say right side is a higher level, you do adduction, it come down and bring back at both at the same level. If it was in lower one, you do the abduction, it go up, bring back same level. Okay, that is the first prerequisite. Another is both the limbs should be in identical position. Pelvis should be square and both the limbs should be in identical position. I will explain what does this identical position mean. Let's say this was here, the SIS was at lower level, okay, lower level. I abduct, let's say for this was in a higher level, let's say I do the adduction, it will come down, okay. Now both the ASIs are at the same level, pelvis is squared. But see here, you can, just by making a pelvis square and you measure from this point to middle malleus and this ASIS to middle malleus will not do. The limbs are not in identical position. This is in adducted position, this is neutral position. So the identical position means that if this is, let's say, is around 10 degree of adduction, you keep this limb on the same 10 degree of adduction here. So this now, both the limbs are in 10 degree of adducted position and pelvis is square. This is how you measure. So pelvis should be square and both the limbs should be in identical position. So remember, for upper length, both the limbs are parallel to each other and parallel to trunk. This is the prerequisite. For true length, pelvis should be square and both the limbs should be in identical position. So while measuring a true length, let's say for the right side, I have squared the pelvis by doing certain degree adduction. I will measure from the ASIS to medial malleus in this adduction, say 10 degree adducted position. And again, I will do the adduction like this, almost same degree, whatever for this was. And you measure from the ASIS to this. So these two will give the true length. Remember, the number are not important. However, relative shortening or lengthening is important. This is a linear measurement.